diverse housing types, general plan and community plans to implement general plan goals and policies related to maintaining general plan housing capacity, and land development code update to consolidate and modernize zoning and use regulations by making them easily understood and applied. This is a list of the 19 actions. Some are already underway as part of the Planning and Development Services Work Program. Several have been previously directed by the board, and others are new efforts or are programmatic options requiring direction from the board. 13 of the 19 actions are previously directed by the board or are already underway. The time frames for completing these 13 actions are short, medium, and long term as shown on this slide, and resources have been identified to complete the work. These actions reflect the commitment to reduce the time and costs associated with the permit process and streamline the development review process through business process reengineering, enhancements to community engagement, and continued partnering with industry representatives to improve project management and processing of applications. The remaining 6 of the 19 actions are new efforts requiring board direction or are programmatic options for future development. These are short to long-term efforts and will be discussed further in subsequent slides.
We will now review options for board consideration, starting with the density bonus program. State law allows a developer to take advantage of a density bonus by building additional units in exchange for reserving a portion of the units for deed-restricted affordable housing. Developers are also eligible to receive incentives for providing these affordable units, such as parking or setback reductions. For example, if a project has a maximum allowable residential density of 10 units and 10% are reserved for rental for low-income households, then the project is entitled to a 20% density bonus of 2 additional units and 1 development incentive. The county's existing density bonus program has had little success, with only 1 application process since the program was adopted in 1979. 2 potential options to expand the density bonus program beyond state law are proposed. Option 1 would increase the maximum number of incentives allowed. For example, this would increase the development incentives received from 2 to 3 incentives for project providing 20% or higher low-income units. Option 2 would expand the existing density bonus program to a broader range of incomes. The goal of this program would be to provide incentives for developers for construction of housing projects for middle-income houses, such as nurses, firefighters, or teachers. The board can choose to direct staff to develop one or both programs. The board direction requested is to provide direction to develop a program and return to the board for consideration. Inclusionary housing policies are local land use policies that link approvals for market rate housing to the creation of affordable homes for lower to moderate income housing. Costs associated with inclusionary housing programs are typically passed on to home buyers or renters. General Plan H 1.9 states, require developers to provide an affordable housing component when requesting a general plan amendment for large-scale residential projects when this is legally permissible. This policy was included in the implementation plan for the general plan in order to develop criteria within 2 to 7 years after adoption of the plan. In order to develop criteria, a study of fees and the creation of a legally permissible nexus will be required. 4 options for inclusionary housing have been prepared. The board can choose one of these options. The first 2 options are consistent with Policy H 1.9 and would apply to large general plan amendments. Option 1 would require large GPAs to include affordable housing component. This option would not require deed-restricted affordable housing, but would require that a project incorporate opportunities for affordable units, such as a variety of unit sizes, accessory dwelling units, retrofitting of existing off-site affordable units, or making land available to nonprofits for affordable housing. Option 2 would require large GPAs to provide a minimum percentage of units as deed-restricted for lower to moderate income households with a formal inclusionary housing program. This requirement could also be satisfied with a payment of in lieu fees. For these 2 options, staff recommends preparing an economic feasibility and nexus analysis to evaluate how various program options could impact the unincorporated area housing market. Factors for consideration include evaluating how a program could affect the price of market rate units, overall housing production, and a diversity of product types. The next two options for inclusionary housing expand beyond the criteria described in H1.9. Option 3 would be to expand the inclusionary housing requirements to all large development projects and would be an expansion of either option 1 or 2. Option 4 would expand the inclusionary housing requirements to residential projects of all size above a minimum threshold. This option would include a sliding scale for smaller projects or other alternatives to satisfy the requirements. Staff does not recommend these options. The board can choose to direct staff to develop one of the 4 programs. Staff is recommending that an economic analysis be prepared for options 1 and 2 and that staff return to the board for consideration.
An accessory dwelling unit, or ADU, is an attached or detached residential dwelling unit which provides complete, independent living facilities for one or more persons. ADUs can provide a more affordable housing option due to their smaller size and lack of additional land costs and infrastructure requirements. Since January 2017, there have been 126 ADUs permitted in the unincorporated area. Barriers to construction of ADUs include design, engineering, and construction costs, permitting and development impact fees, utility connection costs, lack of access to financing, and owner occupancy requirements. 4 potential options to expand the ADU program beyond state law are proposed. Option 1 includes providing pre-approved ADU plans to property owners. This option would create 4 to 6 plans that are pre-approved by the county. Pre-approved plans would qualify for expedited plan check review and reduced fees. Option 2 would waive development impact and permit fees for a 5-year trial period beginning in early 2019. These fees represent, on average, a 10 to 13% of the cost of building an ADU. This option would reduce costs to homeowners for building permits and other fees related to the construction of an ADU on their parcel by approximately $13,000 to $16,000. Option 3 would create a new lower-cost alternative by creating a junior accessory dwelling unit category, which costs less to build and requires no additional parking. This option would allow homeowners to convert a room contained within their primary residence for a junior ADU up to a maximum of 500 square feet. Board direction requested is to prepare the pre-approved plans, prepare an ordinance for a 5-year trial program to waive ADU fees, and prepare an ordinance to allow junior ADUs and return to the board for consideration. The board can direct staff to develop 1, 2, or 3 of these options. The 4th ADU option is to develop a pilot program to provide bridge funding to property owners to construct an ADU with a commitment to renting the ADU at an affordable rate. This option would provide a loan or grant for new ADU construction or to convert an existing space into an ADU. Similar subsidy programs are being developed as pilot programs in other jurisdictions such as the County and City of Los Angeles. Board direction requested is to monitor implementation of these similar programs in other jurisdictions and report back to the board in 1 year. A transfer of development rights, or a TDR program, could be used to retain general plan capacity and achieve other public policy goals, such as open space, conservation, or climate action plan implementation. TDR tool will remove the right to develop or build from one area called a sending site and redirect or transfer development to designated receiving sites. A TDR program could also be designed to incentivize developers to implement planning priorities by transferring units to identified areas or by facilitating the provision of infrastructure. 5 options have been prepared to address TDRs. Option 1 would establish an excess dwelling unit bank to track unbuilt units from rezoned properties or developments built at less than the maximum density allowed. The board would have the discretion to allocate unbuilt units on a case-by-case basis to maintain general plan capacity. Option 2 would be a limited scope TDR program with defined criteria for sending and receiving sites to be evaluated by the board on an individual project basis. This option would identify circumstances when use of TDRs would be used, such as general plan amendments. Option 3 is a transaction-based TDR program with mapped sending and receiving sites. This option would require board direction to identify and map sending and receiving sites to facilitate private-to-private market rate transactions to transfer development rights between properties. Depending upon the scope, implementing any of these three options would require preparation of an addendum or supplemental environmental impact report to the General Plan Update Program EIR. The board can direct staff to develop one of the options. Alternatively, the fourth option is to delay action on a TDR program and monitor outcomes of the election results from the Safeguard Our San Diego Countryside initiative to assess its impact on a potential TDR program and report back to the board in 180 days after the election with options. The fifth option would change General Plan Policy H1.2 to require rather than encourage development intensity of at least 80% of the maximum allowed by the general plan. Since many projects are not achieving the densities established in the general plan, this option would require minimum densities for residential projects. This option may not be feasible if the percentage established for minimum densities is not aligned with market conditions in the unincorporated county and could discourage or stifle development. Staff does not recommend this option. The final area where staff is requesting direction is providing flexibility for varied housing types. Missing middle housing types, such as duplexes, triplexes, live-work units, and other multifamily housing types could be encouraged through greater flexibility and reduced regulatory barriers. Ordinance changes would require community and public outreach to determine standards which should be modified to allow for the varied housing types. There is likely to be different perspectives on where these units should be allowed. This option is to investigate and develop new programs and ordinances as part of the Land Development Code update to allow and incentivize the broader range of missing middle housing types. Board direction requested is to develop a program and return to the board for consideration. This concludes the options for consideration. There are three actions requested by staff for the Housing Affordability Report. The first is to find, in accordance with Section 15262 of the California Environmental Quality Act, that today's actions are statutorily exempt from CEQA. Second, to receive the options to improve housing affordability in the unincorporated area report. And third, to provide direction to staff on options contained within the report for density bonuses, affordable and inclusionary housing, accessory dwelling units, general plan capacity and the transfer of development rights, and the Land Development Code options. If all of the programmatic options for the actions are accepted and directed by the board, additional costs are estimated up to $11 million for a 5-year trial fee waiver program, $4 million in one-time funding requests in the next 2 fiscal years, and $160,000 in ongoing costs to support the addition of 1 staff year. This concludes staff's presentation. We are now available for any questions.
Thank you. Preliminary questions by the board or straight to the public speakers? Please call the public speakers forward.
Thank you, Chairwoman. We have 7 requests to speak in favor and 1 request in opposition. I'll call for the first 4 in favor: Kara Lacey, Rick Pruitz, John Brady, and Matt Adams. You'll have 3 minutes to address the board. Please begin by stating your name for the audio record.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for your time. My name is Kara Lacey, and I am with the Nature Conservancy. I'm a program director with the Nature Conservancy. First, I want to start by thanking staff very much for your time and for allowing us to be a part of this process and for allowing our feedback. I'm here to speak today in support of a density transfer program, and I also want to let you know that Mr. Richard Preetz had to leave. He has written the Transfer Development Rights Handbook, and so we've been looking to him as an expert in TDRs to help us kind of look through all of this information. But unfortunately, he had to leave. So he was the next speaker. The Nature Conservancy works to find solutions that protect both people and nature. We recognize the need for housing to meet the growing population and have been researching transfer of development rights as a tool to address some of the most pressing issues facing the state today. The County of San Diego, like the state, is experiencing a housing and affordable housing crisis, and we definitely recognize that. At the same time, there are more frequent and intense wildfires, a loss of working lands, and habitat fragmentation due to sprawling developments. So we continue to ask ourselves, how do we grow in a way to address housing and protect nature, and also to protect people from hazards, protect working lands from conversion, and protect biologically significant places while continuing to invest in the MSCP. That's a lot. But we are looking at transfer of development rights as being a potential tool that can do all of these things. So I'll just skip to the point. We're asking your board to consider to look at a comprehensive transfer of development rights program and test that through pilots if possible. We would like you to enable a TDR program that explores the possibility to incentivize housing in areas that are planned for existing infrastructure, to streamline development in those areas, to enable the potential to mitigate, minimize, or avoid impacts to natural lands, working lands, greenhouse gas emissions, to explore opportunities through the use of this tool for achieving in-county carbon offsets, which may be possible, and to reduce wildfires. If your board has to choose an option today, we are looking at option 3 as being the recommended option from the Nature Conservancy. Unlike 1 and 2, we felt like it enables more of a possibility for a multiple benefit outcome, and that it's a comprehensive way rather than a case-by-case basis to look at transfer development rights. It could also be expanded to explore creation of a revolving fund in order to enable a credits bank that could continually revolve and invest into open space, parks, conservation, working lands. And the third point is that we ask that you consider demonstrating TDRs in 1 or 2 pilots. So locations are obviously up to you. We did look at the possibility of a pilot to demonstrate achievement of housing and affordable housing in 1 location could be possible, or the community of Alpine, as it goes through its community plan update, could be the potential pilot for looking at private-to-private transactions or testing that model out. So we feel the County of San Diego led the state of California in developing the multiple species conservation plan. You have an opportunity to tailor and design this TDR program and lead the charge in this as well for the state. Thank you.
I have a quick question. Tell me, what's the name of the expert that was going to testify and the name of his book?
Richard Preetz, and it's called the TDR Handbook. It's pretty
TDR
straightforward.
Handbook.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
also written multiple other books on the topic and has researched it throughout the nation and the state. And there are 33 other jurisdictions in California that have TDRs.
I want to make sure that Mr. Wardlaw reads that. So.
He'll let you read it first. He'll borrow it from you. Next speaker, please. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a copy of that book. I'm happy to loan it to you. Just make sure I get it back, okay?
You probably haven't read it either, Matt.
Yes, I have, but it's been a few years. I'll have to reacquaint myself with it. Good morning, Matthew Adams, representing the Building Industry Association of San Diego County. I wanted to start out by thanking staff for their outreach to our industry. We had numerous meetings on the components that you have heard today, and we've appreciated the give and take and the feedback, and it's nice to see that some of the suggestions have made it to the PowerPoint, and that's how we work on good policy, by working together. So thank you and to your staff for the outreach. A couple of things I wanted to talk about. One of the things dealing with regulatory reform, I think it was option 3, process streamlining. There was a quote in there, streamline the decision-making authority, and that's a very good idea. One of the areas that we're exploring by examining multiple jurisdictions, Dallas, Clark County, Nevada, and Raleigh, North Carolina, they call it permit in a day. And it's really not a day, even though we'd love to have it in a day. But what it is you do your first project review, and then all of the disciplines at the jurisdiction huddle together. It's called the huddle on the second review, and they go over every component of your project and try to solve them in one main major meeting. And what that has shown some significant results in the 3 jurisdictions that I spoke of, and it should be something we would ask that the county would consider as well. In terms of the density bonus and we call ours the enhanced density bonus program. You had 2 options. One was middle income, one was density bonus. Why not do them both? It shouldn't be either or. We've worked with the city of San Diego on a program where you can get up to 50% density bonus and 5 or more incentives to make your project work. And it's actually paying off, and they've seen substantial increases in the production of affordable units because the economics work. All of this has to do with the economics. The same thing with the middle income density bonus. The housing ladder is broken. It's the middle income component that is unattainable because it's unaffordable to build. And we have to find the appropriate incentives to move forward so we can reestablish the housing ladder. Inclusionary zoning, I think our position on inclusionary is well known. You have to do an economic study before you do anything because you don't want to have unintended consequences. What happened with Portland and San Jose is that they saw drastic reductions in overall housing supply as the market had to accommodate the more robust inclusionary requirements. In Portland, they had an average of 3,000 to 6,000 units per year. After the inclusionary within the first year, they had less than 1,000. So an economic study is important. We'd also lastly like you to consider self-certification programs, and also we are supportive of the transfer of development rights that I think Mr. Whalen will talk about as well. Thank you very much.
As the next speaker is coming forward, I'd like to invite the remaining speakers in favor, Bob Cummings, Jim Whalen, and Stephanie Benvenuto.
Hi.
Good morning. My name is John Brady, Chairperson Gaspar and County Board of Supervisors. I want to thank you for your time. I stand before you today representing the voices of our city choir, a choir that was founded and created to address the homelessness crisis and as a result, resulting from the housing crisis. We stand in support of this initiative and this zoning. We are in support of any increase in housing density and anything that will address our critical housing shortage. I do want to draw your attention to page 17 of the report. Specifically, this is focused on in lieu fees. We suggest that you significantly raise developer in lieu fees or eliminate them entirely. The reason is they do not support inclusionary housing and diversity policies and increase the opportunity for NIMBYism. How, you may ask? In lieu of fees do not adequately offset the loss of moderate and low-income housing, and by allowing buyouts on some projects, you force increased low and moderate housing in other areas, raising the very real possibility of further NIMBYism. On a related note, I do want to point out that today is World Homelessness Day. To that end, I encourage you to take on more responsibility for our current homeless population. To date, the majority of responsibility for sheltering our homelessness has been delegated to the city of San Diego and the surrounding cities. You are the keeper of the largest budget of the region. I suggest you should be focusing even more resources in the area of temporary housing and leading innovations such as safe camps and safe parks on county-controlled land throughout the region until the housing crisis has been addressed. It is unfair to shoulder the responsibility so heavily on the city of San Diego and its mayor, Kevin Faulconer. Thank you for your time.
Can I respond to that? I'm ready to jump out of my seat because that is pure baloney. This board has, first of all, we are spending not tens of millions, over 100 million on this issue. We have set aside 11 properties now, in all of which we're getting pushback on, that they don't want them in the city of San Diego, okay? We're taking that burden. We didn't ask for any help. We've increased our homeless PERT teams that are out there, our emergency response team, psychological
And
emergency
I appreciate that. I'm not.
Yeah, but listen to me.
I'm sorry.
Because you made a statement that's just, I'm listening to the tweets that are coming out of some of the mayors that have no idea what this board is doing. I'm tired of hearing it, okay? We're doing these things. We have, across the board, made significant investment. We have Project One for All. You know what Project One for All is?
Yes, I do. I'm very aware of it.
Do you know the success of Project One for All?
I'm aware of some.
Do you know how much money the city has in that?
I do not know, but I do know the city does not have any significant budget availability either.
Well, they don't have a budget because of the way they spend their money. Okay.
And I did not come here to
Well,
criticize
no,
your
but
efforts,
you did.
and I apologize.
Supervisor.
And I just,
Sir,
I can't.
Probably would be more productive if he makes his statement if you have a seat. Thank you so much.
That's
we
all right. I
appreciate your
apologize.
comments. You can continue to make his comments. supervisor, but let's let him have a seat first.
Tired of hearing the tweets and the idiocy that's coming out of certain quarters from government officials that ought to know better.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Hi.
My name is Bob Cummings. I'm with Chelsea, and Chelsea has developed over 60% of the inclusionary affordable housing in San Diego County to date, and I'm here to support this. I applaud staff. Went to a couple workshops, and it's probably the best handled workshops I've seen to date, so thank you very much. A lot of good things in this. I'm here to support the BIA's position. As an affordable builder with 20 years in the past of market rate provides the mechanism in a healthy environment for affordable to be built. The good thing about the report is that it provides incentives to provide affordable housing. If the incentives are given enough, then the land has value that the land seller sells to a developer. The developer builds housing, and affordable gets built on top of that. Too many restrictions make a land residual that has an unwilling seller. An unwilling seller means less housing is built. Less housing market rate means less affordable. Simple as that. So I urge you to adopt these quickly. As we all know that we've heard rumors that the housing market or the housing prices might level. Last time we went through this, it created devastating effects by the spiral of homes not being built. So incentives given to developers to build housing will provide the affordable that we need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairwoman Gaspar, and members of the board. I will start by my name, Jim Whalen, J. Whalen Associates, 1660 Hotel Circle North. And the idea I'm going to talk to you about arose at a cocktail party at Christmas. But it was a good one. First of all, I want to thank staff. You did a great job pulling this together. I'd like to basically just talk about the TDR. It's the only thing I want to talk about this morning. And it came up in this cocktail party that the Alpine School District teachers were very unhappy they couldn't get a high school. So the genesis of this idea came out of that. So if you just look at the handout there, what we have is two interested property owners, the Gildreds and Darrell Priest. You have the community planning group who's expressed general openness to the idea of a pilot program. We have a public park that would be part of this effort being contributed to the county for free on the Priest property. We have a mechanism for the first time to think about increasing economic diversity in Alpine, which is hamstrung by a predominance of single-family homes at a very high price point, thus excluding school-age kids and school-age families from locating there. And this is how the high school might be able to happen if you start to get enough school-age kids and school-age housing. There's obvious conservation benefits. The Gildred property is the largest land ownership in Alpine. It's in a relatively high fire area, and it's near the river park. And then the last part is we do have the opportunity for integrating a pilot program in the community plan update in Alpine, because they're doing it right now. We're right in the middle of it. And I would particularly like to thank staff for having the timing of this community plan update at the same time we're entertaining this idea of a pilot program. And I'd like to ask the board to direct staff to work with us on this pilot effort. We don't know how it's going to go. I will tell you this, though. Our firm has done these before. We did one with Pardee in San Diego, and we are doing one now that you may remember, the sale of the development rights off Bottle Peak to an annexation in Escondido. So we know how to do them. They need to be transaction-based, though, because you never know who the sending and receiving parties are going to be, and they're always different. So with that, I'll stop, and if there's any questions, I'm glad I finished beforehand.
Thank you.
Straightforward?
Oh, yes.
Thanks.
Next speaker, please.
As a final speaker in favor is coming forward, I'd like to invite our speaker in opposition, Martha Welsh.
Good morning, Chair Gaspar and fellow Board of Supervisors. My name is Stephanie Benvenuto. I'm here on behalf of the San Diego Regional Chamber of Commerce, and we're pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you regarding the issue of affordable housing development, as it has been and remains a major emphasis of the Chamber. We want to reiterate the compliments of staff. They've done an admirable job making sure that stakeholders are at the table. They've been very transparent, very accountable, and very open to feedback. We believe that the report represents some very positive options and also, more importantly, represents an understanding that the development of housing requires a balanced approach that operates within the housing market. More specifically, our proposals to incentivize or spur the creation of homes in the affordable and moderate ranges cannot be toned up to the realities of what it costs to build a home. I would like to just really quickly call out that we are very supportive of both density bonuses. We're particularly pleased that the middle income density bonus was included. This is exactly the range that seems to be the most challenging to build and exactly the range that my 2,500 members are routinely asking for. So that's wonderful. It's of no surprise that streamlining and permitting was included, but we always want to give credit to staff for including that as well, understanding the impact that time and regulations have on building homes. We also would encourage the county to expand and continue its look at excess land to include underutilized land and ensure that it's being used, that all land is being used to its highest and best use. And of course, the inclusionary language we are always very interested in. We look forward to seeing the studies and the analysis that will come forward on that. Much of what the BIA mentioned regarding some possible detrimental impacts to adopting an inclusionary policy is, of course, something that we also believe. And I'll just close on saying we appreciate what the board has done recently to adopt and approve market rate homes, and staff, we know that it's not always an easy process, and pivoting to look at the affordable piece is a natural and understandable next step, and we look forward to being supportive of that. Please don't hesitate to call on the business community where we can be useful. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
That concludes public testimony on this item.
Excellent. Supervisor Horn.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a couple of questions. I'm reading your format here. On PI4, the impact fee study, before you waste a lot of time, don't you think we should wait till the election's over with to find out where we're at with this?
Through the chair, if you're speaking to PI4, which is Development Impact Fee Study,
yeah, right.
That is a fee study of the impact fees that we charge to understand if we can, for example, convert from a per unit cost to a square footage cost. So it's not related to the general plan initiative. It's a study that would focus on, are there economies of scale or are there more effective or efficient ways to establish an impact fee?
I was worried about what the fee might be at the election.
Can I ask a follow-up on that, Supervisor?
Sure.
I understand the intent. I think I understand the intent of going to a fee based on the square footage of the dwelling unit, because your goal would be to incentivize the development community to build smaller units, correct, which would be more affordable in nature. Is that the...
Chairwoman, in part that, but it's also to have a more close relationship between the impact generated, which is typically through the number of people in a particular household, to the cost assessed. So imagine, if you will, a 500 square foot unit. It may have one unit, one person, maybe two people, and the impact of water, parks, streets, roads would be less than a 3,500 square foot unit, which is much more likely to have a larger household. And so by linking it to impact generated, it tends to make a more equitable distribution, and then therefore makes it easier for the smaller units to be achieved. And there are some restrictions to some fees, so that would not apply, but we would conduct that study to assess its success and their impacts.
Okay, because there are some negatives in that if you are trying to get that smaller unit incentivized for the developer to give up that square footage, it just seems like it wouldn't necessarily pencil for the developer to do that. But I'd be interested to see what other jurisdictions operate this way. Do we have any other local jurisdictions on that schedule?
Yes, in fact, our initial review in this effort, we've done extensive research. We've looked at Portland, at Austin, at Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles City and County, and we see a particular trend in converting to square footage because it is more related to impact generated. And then if directed, we would include a detailed report about what we're seeing others do and their success and their failures when we would return back to the board.
Great, back to Supervisor Horn.
Thank you. The other question I had was on the density bonus program. I like, I like both of them. I was very curious. The city of San Diego increased theirs up to 50%, which I think has had a great impact on them. Maybe we should consider that rather than a lower percentage, because it was pointed out here, it's cost prohibitive to build lower units if you don't have enough of a bonus to make it worthwhile to the developer. So I don't know how my colleagues would feel about that, but I would consider maybe upping the percentage or the bonus that you can give them up to 50%. I don't know, saying 50%, but it just depends on the qualification that you have on the scale. Maybe the person gets to 40%. So whatever makes it economically more viable for somebody to build those kind of units, that's my other concern. I'll come back later, but that's my two questions I have.
Thank you. Vice Chair Jacob.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think staff did a pretty good job of coming back with what we had asked for. A lot of options. I have a couple of things that I'd like to focus on. My overreaching question is, what will give us the biggest impact in the shortest amount of time in terms of getting on-the-ground construction of affordable units? And it gets me back to the number of vacant buildable lots in the unincorporated area. How many do we have today that are out there that could be built on?
Supervisor Jacob, through the chair, we did a search through our assessor's parcel records, and we've uncovered that there's approximately 156,000 private parcels in the county. Of those, 26,000 are vacant. And from the pool of vacant parcels, approximately 10,000 are buildable. And this is based upon there being legal lots and proximity to infrastructure like roads and size of lots. So we have about 10,000 parcels that exist today that are vacant and buildable.
So we've got 10,000. So then, and we've got a lot here. And my intent is to try to focus and prioritize what we can get done in the shortest amount of time. And it looks like that leads to P13, the accessory dwelling unit, options 1, 2, 3, possibly 4, if the board is interested in looking at subsidizing.
Through the chair, we have a slide up that might represent some of the most impactful short-term actions.
Okay.
Supervisor, so what this represents are those that we could begin implementing within 6 months. The first item is the option 1 as part of the density bonus program. This is to increase the number of incentives and concessions allowed within a development. And then with the accessory dwelling units, you identified options 1, 2, and 3. These are the pre-approved plans, the waiver of impact fees for ADUs, as well as establishing a new category for accessory dwelling units, which is that junior ADU, which is a much smaller unit size. As part of a zoning code cleanup, which is tentatively scheduled to return to the board in early 2019, we could address some regulatory reforms, such as amending the group quarters ordinance to include kitchen facilities within group quarters, and that could facilitate developments such as assisted living for seniors as well. We also have an item which is referenced as the residential rounding. This would allow for property owners that may be allowed 1.5 units or a fraction of a unit based upon their lot size. And so what the residential rounding would be to allow the unit to round up to the whole number, so to go from 1.5 to 2 units, as an example. And also we have permit procedures, which we'll be looking at as part of the zoning code cleanup, where we can allow more administrative permits to be transitioned to ministerial so that they would be a quicker process to go through, as well as site implementation agreements. And this is where certain conditions of approval could be deferred during the development process, which would allow developers to defer some of these things later into the process when development has begun.
Thank you. That's a good list. I'd like to separate the density bonus option out for further discussion, but I'd put a motion on the floor to move forward with all those other options that staff just mentioned that are on our screen at this point. I'd like to retain the floor then, because I have some others, if there's a second for that to move. And those could be done within 6 months, you say?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And I would submit, Madam Chair, that's a good place to start. So.
Thank you. Supervisor Roberts.
Yeah, first of all, I'm comfortable with that motion, but I don't think it goes far enough.
No, I
don't know why we're dividing it into, I mean, I can't ever remember coming in here on such a complex issue where I think the staff has done an incredible job, because I'm in agreement with every one of their recommendations. Never before. Even the development impact fees, the study that they want to do, where Mr. Wardlaw connected it with a higher degree of impacts, I think the fundamental, impact, let's say you're going to build a 1,000-unit minimal house, that impact fee that somebody could be building in the same neighborhood, be building a house 3 times that size, the impact on the budget of trying to get that house built is much higher when we have a uniform impact fee per house, which is what we have. And it seems to me that your chances of getting your lower and moderate income housing built is reduced significantly by that type of a program. But the nexus is you're likely to have larger impacts, which gives you a legal standing for being able to discriminate between housing that gets increasingly larger. So I absolutely like that recommendation too. I mean, you could go right down this list. That list contains things that in addition to what's on here.
Yeah, I think the supervisor would like to clarify the intent behind the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, all I'm trying to do is focus our discussion and get off the ground with a couple of items, and then we can go back and discuss the others.
Okay.
Option 4 under the accessory dwelling units is not on the list that staff had provided. And the only thing I'd like to take off that list that's not in the motion, it discussed separately the density bonus situation. So just to get us off the ground, because I have some other items that I'd like to discuss also, but this is just one. So if we could just start here, I think it's a good starting place to, again, get us some results that would give us the biggest impact on potentially affordable housing. We've got 10,000 vacant lots out there. Let's try to get as many of those built on as possible.
Well, LDC 4 is not on that list.
No, 4 is not on the list. I think if we're going to subsidize, we need to know what we're subsidizing. Staff has asked for a study on one of the other items of the fees, and to go maybe towards the square footage, which would be a fair situation. I mean, we can discuss that.
Well, in both cases, they're asking that they come back with a study. They're not asking we adopt a program here.
That's true.
Yeah, so I didn't know why you were excluding those.
That's fine. I'll include 4.
Yeah,
all of those in P1-3, and then the additions that staff has on there. Excuse me.
Well, if we could
I
include
think,
P1,
I think the way that we are going to have to better organize, since there seems to be a lot of discussion, is probably just to go down the list. I thought that the intent of the motion maker was to at least agree that we are all comfortable with these,
well,
and then return to
that's
the
what
other
I'm trying to
items.
do is bring us, I think
Right.
in one motion, we can clear it all.
Well,
I wasn't sure
not
what
sure.
the intent was.
I'm not sure we can.
For me, I won't be able to clear it all in one motion. There's some areas that I do have disagreement with, but
Well,
most
I hear
areas
the
are-
supervisors, I thought I understood the supervisor saying that she was in agreement with LDC 4 and maybe PI 4, and if that's the case,
Wait a minute.
why not continue, put them in, and I think you're pretty well done.
I'd like to start just with what we've got on the board, with the exception of the density bonus. Let's separate that out, because I'm with the chair on this. I may not agree with a lot of these others, and the idea here is to focus, at least start. So if we could get agreement on this motion, it's a start, and then I want to talk about transfer of development rights, what Mr. Whalen mentioned, and then also the grading ordinance, which has been a great inhibitor to our building.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a look at the screen? If there's any supervisor that has a point of contention with the options on the screen, then we could ask those questions now. If not, we could just vote on these items and then move on to the balance by going down the list. Is that something that we're comfortable with?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with, just like you got P1 up there, 1. I like option 1 and 2. Why can't they do them both?
And I'm comfortable with option 1 and 2 under the density bonus program, but it sounded like there was some discussion that needed to be had on option 2, which could be revisited after this motion is made.
Well, okay, well, let's see what they, the staff's going to come back with a recommendation.
Can we just agree on 2? Let's see.
On what?
All of them that are up there except the density bonus. That's the motion. Can we just agree on those?
Yes, the motion has been amended to take out the density bonus program. It would include PI3, RR4, LDC2, RR3, and RR1.
Wait.
And PI3 options 1, 2, and 3.
Option 1, direct staff.
I'd say this is going extremely well so far.
Retain, option
Give it
to retain a general plan
C,
capacity.
maybe?
Transfer development rights. Limited scope TDRs, county managed. Well, I don't know what that means.
Except for PI1.
All due respect here, you got GP3, you got 1, 2, and 3 up there. I don't even know what those mean. County managed. What does that mean? Tell me what your county's going to manage. I trust Wardlaw as far as I can throw him, but I want to know what the definition is. I'm sorry, I can't. Has this been seconded?
Yes.
Seconded.
Yes.
What's wrong with you, Kristen? Okay.
I think I'm rational, reasonable right here. I was wondering what was wrong with you. Okay, well, if we can go down this list from the beginning and ask questions as we go on. So perhaps we just scrap it. We're trying to make your lives easy up here. But we can start from the beginning, and that's what we're going to do now. We're just going to start from the beginning. We're going to start with PI1. We're going to talk about the density bonus program as a group, and we're going to talk about the options that are available. Option 1, option 2, and of course the option to just order not an option.
Madam Chair, there is a motion on the floor.
And I'd like to make a substitute motion. We'll start right at the top.
I'll withdraw the motion, but can I address an issue that is not on this list? It's buried in the back, which is the grading ordinance. And Supervisor Horn, you should be interested in this. There's a couple issues that I want to raise in regards to this that I've run into, not just with people that are trying to build a house, but we have a real conflict with our promotion of agriculture and the existing grading ordinance. I've had people that have wanted to put in wineries, and all they want to do is dig holes to plant the grapes on existing terrain, whatever that is, and some of it's on slope, and they have had to get a grading permit, which is cost prohibitive in trying to do this. We've had numerous discussions with staff on this issue, so I know staff understands it. And while I'm very supportive, and this issue comes up, it's LDC-1, and what's in here that's not on the list that we're going to go through is to complete phased ordinance updates to first streamline grading and clearing permits for common projects, followed by a comprehensive update to all grading standards. Currently, the grading ordinance requires grading and clearing permit for a broad range of property activities, including clearing associated with digging a well and landscaping improvements, resulting in additional time and costs for property owners. If you want to talk about some real roadblocks for people to build, this is it, not just for property owners, for agriculture. So what I would like to do, let me try this motion since I was so successful with the last one, is to direct staff to complete the update through a bifurcated approach by separating out the agricultural clearing permit from the grading for residential housing projects. By separating that out, there should be different rules for agricultural grading versus for housing projects, and that needs to be.
I'll second that.
Second.
That's a direct staff.
And I want this done as soon as possible, and I don't want the ag component to get tied up long-term with any changes to the residential, but the residential aspect should be changed also. This is just common sense, so thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote on LDC 1, the action requested by the supervisor.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Okay.
Excellent. We're calming down, making steady progress.
Could we start with PI1 density bonus program options 1 and 2? I'd like to move the approval of those.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second there. Let's vote.
I want to, Madam Chair, just state for the record, I will support staff developing a program, but in no way will indicate whether or not I'm going to support the program once it comes back. I don't know what staff's going to come back with, so just want to make sure that's understood.
And I would like to talk a little bit about density bonus because I come from the city of Encinitas, the land of unintended consequences, the
We
place
haven't gotten
where
to that yet, though.
density bonus is.
We're going to talk about that. We're going to go from the top down.
I'm talking about density bonus. That is P11, the density bonus program, and why this is so important. The city of San Diego right now, in my view, has created a model of excellence in revisiting the table altogether and talking about the incentives that would be necessary for the development community to move forward. This is a highly productive way to actually yield affordable housing within projects. Encinitas went about things the wrong way. They created policies, they created mandates, fees, restrictions, all with the stated goal to produce more affordable housing in the city. Well, it had an opposite effect. It drove all housing projects in the city of Encinitas to become density bonus projects, which were literally hated by the community. It's interesting to be here at the county where we have very few density bonus projects coming before us, but it's not a surprise that that's the case because we have better policies that are on the books. We have less restrictive policies that are on the books. So if we take some time and we really place emphasis on a well thought out density bonus program here, I think it makes the need for an inclusionary housing program even less significant. The inclusionary housing program sometimes works well in conjunction with a density bonus program because it guides developers to the incentive-based density bonus program if it is less or has more incentives involved than under the state law. So in my opinion, it would be interesting to really fully think out and develop a clear density bonus program versus the stick approach, which I consider to be the inclusionary housing program. So I was going to ask you on this why the recommendation was to pursue both the inclusionary housing program and the density bonus program at the same time, or if it may be wise to look at what we can yield from a well thought out incentive program under density bonus and evaluate whether it's actually yielding the number of affordable units that we desire.
Chairwoman, our recommendation regarding the affordable housing categories were principally driven to acknowledge that the housing policy H1.9 clearly states develop the program. Staff believes that the analysis that would go into a well-crafted density bonus program may well achieve what you have suggested. And so it's certainly plausible for us to conduct the density bonus program and analysis first. That too will require some fee study, because we'll need to know that what we recommend is actually feasible economically with some pro forma based analysis, and then tailor that to the range of restrictions that would come, the requirements that would come with the density bonus program. So it's a reasonable choice for the board to consider approving both at this time, or proceeding with density bonus, and then based on that, returning at a later date to focus on the affordable housing.
It just seems like a waste of resources to me to explore so many things all at one time. I mean, to me, the supervisor started out by saying what gives us the quickest result and actual produced more affordable units in the county. And to me, that just makes a whole lot of sense. And spending money to study something, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. My concern would be I've read a lot of studies over testing the theory of whether the inclusionary policies diminish the supply of housing, and there are mixed reviews. There are all sorts of studies that are out there that have different answers to that question. But I think that the quickest way...
The motion right now is just for...
Thank you, Supervisor. I'm asking the staff
PI1,
member.
and we're talking about...
Yes.
PI2,
PI1, density bonus program, option 1 and 2.
Yes.
Yes. I'm talking about density bonus.
You keep talking about the inclusionary housing ordinance.
Because in my opinion,
okay, I understand,
this impacts the
that.
next one. So I'm making my comments now regarding the density bonus program because it does have an impact on whether I support the study and the dollars involved with studying an inclusionary housing program. And to me, if we think out and are careful about a crafted density bonus program, then I'm not supportive of the next one. So I'm just teeing it up for P1-2, but I'm happy to restate the comments under the proper P1-2 category as well.
Yeah, and I think as part of this, we have to find in accordance with section 15061B3 exemption from the CEQA. Is that correct? And with that, then the motion is on PI-1 density bonus program to approve options 1 and 2.
Thank you. We have a second on the motion. We'll vote.
I second.
Chairwoman Gaspar, the motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Thank you. On to PI2.
PI2, I'd like to take the staff recommendation that they prepare an economic analysis as supported by the Chamber and other groups and return the board for consideration under both options 1 and option 2.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Oh, I'll second
A motion and a second. And we'll vote.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about P1-2 now?
Yeah, not 3 and 4, just the motion was to approve 1 and 2 and have them do an economic analysis and return with that.
Yeah, I'm not going to support that, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I'm not going to support inclusionary housing ordinance, and the cost of that, if you're looking at, if I have it right, $880,000 for staff. Option 1. I mean, we're talking almost $1 million. Now, we need to decide right here and now, are we sending staff on a wild goose chase on something that in the end, we're not going to support and we're going to spend all that money?
And that's why I was making the comments I was making, because I would be unlikely to support that.
Well, I know I'm not going to support it. It hasn't worked
Could the staff
in
respond?
other jurisdictions, and I think there's other options for us to get to where we want to go here with affordable housing. This is not one.
Madam Chair, just a point of clarification. For options 1 and 2 under the Affordable Inclusionary Housing Program and Ordinances, the costs are $240,000 in one-time funding to prepare an economic analysis and develop the program ordinance and criteria and return back to the board for consideration. So that cost of $240,000 is for the economic analysis.
And then why did you make a decision to apply this analysis to GPAs only and not to just universally to our projects? The staff recommendation was not on large projects.
The basis for the actions is on policy H1.9. Options 1 and 2 reflect compliance with policy H1.9. Staff's recommendation for the analysis is for those two options. Options 3 and 4 is to expand it beyond H1.9, and staff is not recommending those options 3 and 4.
But that's my question. Why are you not recommending options 3 and 4?
Board direction would be required when expanding the application of this beyond the policy and the general plan. And that's the basis of our recommendation.
I have a question.
But you do or you do not believe that would be a good idea? I guess that's the question. I'm asking for your professional opinion.
Through the chair, well, to the chair. So in our review of the affordable housing policy, it says specifically for large residential GPAs, we're also thoughtful about the impact of establishing inclusionary programs, and whether it's a percent or by fee, there is an impact. So somebody is paying for the affordable housing. And at this point in time, based on our general plan policy, it's pretty specific and clear to the GPA. By spreading that cost to all projects or projects that are not a general plan amendment, it really changes the dynamic of costs and implementation. In our readings, we're finding, similar to what you've heard in public testimony, that there are often unintended consequences with the requirement exclusively and in breadth of affordable housing. And so whoever's subsidizing it, whether it's through tax credits, through land participation, through public funds, or the other remaining purchasers and participants in a housing project, somebody's taking that subsidy on. So we thought it more prudent at this point in time to remain consistent with that policy direction and receive then direction from the board on how to do so.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question. Is it possible to get rid of this H1.9? Could we make a motion to get rid of that?
Through the chair,
It'd be a lot cheaper.
You could direct staff to consider rescinding or modifying. We would have to do work on that. We would have to understand certainly the CEQA impacts, if any, but we'll also have to have a more in-depth analysis and discussion with the State Housing and Community Development Department, who has certified our housing element. Housing element is the section of the general plan that is approved by the state as well. So there will be some extensive work involved in doing that. You could direct us to do that in a future action, or you could have us return with an analysis associated with this current work program.
Claudia, do you have a suggestion?
I actually would echo Mr. Wardlaw's comments. We could have the direction received today, but it would require work for us to return with appropriate analysis.
So the two of you think we could actually get rid of it? That's my question.
Through the chair, speaking for myself, I don't know. Because of the regulatory direction that the state is taking in terms of increasing regulations to ensure compliance with housing elements and actually move to seeing the production of affordable housing, it's something that's unknown to us, and we'd have to have dialogue and review with the state.
And it is a component of our adopted general plan, so we need to evaluate the impacts on the adopted general plan.
Okay, so
Okay,
we have
we
on the
would-
floor a motion P12, options 1 through 4. 1 through 2. You do not want to take action on 3 and 4 because that was to direct staff not to develop an ordinance. So option 3 is to not to develop an ordinance related to the large project inclusionary and also to not develop an ordinance, the comprehensive inclusionary housing ordinance included in option 4.
So what's the motion?
They're going for all options, all the staff recommendations.
Recommendations on 1, 2, 3, and 4. That, and on the last two, it's to not direct them. I had left those out purposely because we're stating a negative, but
As I stated before, I'm not going to support it. I don't see any reason to spend the money on this. Hold on.
We'll vote.
Go ahead.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes with Vice Chairwoman Jacob and Chairwoman Gaspar voting no, all other supervisors being present and voting aye.
Okay, on to the accessory dwelling units.
PI-3, I support options 1, 2, and 3, which were part of your original motion,
Yes,
Supervisor.
thank you. I'll second it.
Okay, Supervisor Cox?
I just wanted to get staff to comment on the waiver of the impact and permit fees for accessory dwelling units is $2.2 million. I just want to clarify, is that a maximum yearly cap that the county would pay for this trial period?
Through the chair, Supervisor, the 2.2 estimate is based on the volume of accessory dwelling units. Currently, we're processing roughly 100 accessory dwelling units of a year. That number is based on us going up to 150, anticipating a 50% increase based on these changes.
So it would be a yearly?
Correct. That is the estimate based on 150. Going forward, if the number were to increase, that number would be increased as well based on the increased number of ADU permits.
Thank you.
Okay, and option number 4, yell away at me if you'd like, but the staff does need direction on option 4 that's listed, so I'm assuming that you're silent on option 4. That means that you're directing staff not to develop the subsidized construction of the ADU program.
Well, their recommendation was that they monitor.
Monitor it.
I think they can do that. If I would feel comfortable with telling them to monitor others, but not, no, I'm not ready to go ahead. I think we want to.
Yeah, and feel free to monitor others. My only concern is we don't really understand the stated goal or intent of those other jurisdictions. Is that they're struggling to achieve their RENA numbers, for example, like the city of Encinitas, where I come from. That's where we got very involved in ADU policies. Or is it the fact that they just want to simply produce more reasonable
Let's do 1,
housing?
2, 3, 4. The staff's going to monitor, see
The
what
staff
other
recommendation for option 4 under PI-3.
Yeah, so it's all staff recommendation on 1, 2, 3, and 4 under PI-3, correct?
We've already done 1, 2, and 3. So I'm making a motion now that we include the monitoring that the staff is recommending under option 4.
We didn't vote on it yet.
No. I thought we did on 1, 2, and 3.
No.
Then we can include, yeah, I'll amend the motion to include the staff recommendation on number 4.
And that's my second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
PI-4, again, I like the staff recommendation that they prepare a study and come back to the board with respect to the possibility of using the size of a dwelling as the criteria. Okay.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
GP-3, this is the case, and I think what the chair was saying, there are certain things maybe you don't want to be going concurrent. I mean, this is the 800-pound gorilla that's in the room, and I think acknowledging that by adopting option number 4.
May I, Madam Chair? Since the example's in Alpine, in my district, I think we have a great example here. The Alpine Community Plan update is in process, should be finished by the
Through the chair, mid-2020.
mid-2020.
Calendar
It would be
year.
nice if it would be before then. But the example that was given to us, I think, is a great example to launch this TDR program off the ground. There's general consensus, as I understand, from all parties to do this, and Mr. Whalen gave us the pretty drawing, the pretty pictures. We have willing property owners, both for receiving and sending sites, Endangered Habitat League, the Nature Conservancy, the building industry, and the community planning group all agree.
I'm not in disagreement. I'm not sure what we would have to do.
My direction to staff would be to work with all the stakeholders in the community to develop a transfer of development rights program for the community of Alpine and incorporate this effort into the current update of the Alpine Community Plan. That would be a specific direction, and then we can go back to the list on whatever option you want to do on TDRs. That would be my motion.
I guess I would second that. Does that fit into one of the options here that maybe we should be concurrent?
I would hope so.
Through the chair, it's not really in this option, so we'd like you to add that as language, and I would like one moment to check on funding.
Now an awkward moment of silence.
Again, through the chair, that direction will be new and added work to the Alpine Community Plan Program, and we've estimated a cost of $200,000 to complete that work.
Oh my God.
You could have saved the money on the inclusionary housing.
You're a spendthrift.
Well, if we want to do the Transfer Development Rights Program, we have an example here where we can be successful and demonstrate how this can work. So it sounds like a lot of money.
Well,
but
I'll second your motion to proceed. Now, okay, then we would defer.
Well, let's vote on this.
Can we vote on that?
On the other items, the options 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Could we vote on that motion, and then we can go back to the list?
We're adding a special study for the Alpine area.
Does the clerk have that language? Thank you.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Now,
option 4.
My feeling is the staff recommendation to defer actions on options 1, 2, 3, and 5 was the appropriate thing. So it would be adopting GP3- option 4.
Second.
The motion is second.
Yeah.
I don't care about. Yeah, you have to do that anyway.
And then finally on LDC.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Thank you. Finally on LDC 4, I would move staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Okay.
Director Wardlaw, do you have everything that's necessary at this point in time?
Chairwoman Gaspar, yes, we do, and more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We also need to make the recommendation to receive the report on options to improve housing affordability in the unincorporated area and the associated 19 actions.
I'll move that.
Thank you. And then, let's see, we already provided you the directions, so just that one.
Yes.
Thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
It's the second. It's received the report.
Oh,
Second.
All in favor? Let's vote. This open mic format just does not work out very well.
Chairwoman Gaspar, that motion passes unanimously with all board members being present and voting aye.
Okay, thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.
The next regular meeting of the board will take place on Tuesday, October 30th, 2018.